All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Couch Warrior podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mike, and today we're going to be breaking down Dana White's Contender Series Week 9. We're almost done with the show, which really sucks. If you know me, you know I love my Dana White's Contender Series, but at least we have a good card to start wrapping it up with, and we have a good card next week as well. We got a bunch of talented fighters to talk about. I did go live yesterday on Wednesday with my guy Wiz Does on his channel to break down this card. So if you want to see what Wiz has to say and what we were talking about together, make sure to run that one back. And I also dropped a PFL breakdown earlier yesterday as well. We have PFL coming up this week. I believe it's on Saturday morning, and it's PFL Europe. It's a great card, and I have a bunch of bets down. So make sure to run that back. Don't have any bets yet for this card because we don't even have lines yet. And that's the beauty of an early show. That's why I like to do it early, because I do my homework early, and I like to prepare and be ready for when the lines drop. So this way I can prepare you guys as well and get you guys ready for when the lines drop. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. We've got 5 matchups, and I like pretty much all of them except one. And let's start it off. So for our first fight, we've got Lucas Rocha versus Davi Bittencourt or Costa, depends where you look. Rocha 16-1-0. He's 23 years old, 5'2". On the other side, we got Bittencourt. He's 14-3-0. He's going to be 5 years older at 28. And 2 inches taller at 5'4". So this is a really solid matchup, and either guy could have been called up to the UFC, and I don't think anyone would have batted an eye. We've had worse people called up, and they're definitely 2 of the better guys on this card. Now, starting with Rocha, he's 23, so he's super young. He's 16-1-0. He started his MMA career, his pro MMA career, in 2016, meaning he was 16 years old when he debuted, which is absolutely insane. He's actually been fighting for 1 year longer than Davi Bittencourt, despite being 5 years younger. Now, all that said, I would say that the experience still doesn't really quite show. Rocha is really talented, and you can see it's there, and you can tell that this kid is 100% going to be a prospect, and he will be in the UFC, and he might be even ranked one day, maybe in the top 10, top 15. But right now, it's just, to me, it's raw talent, but a lot of mistakes being made and a lot of issues still present there, right? So on the bright side, on the pros, he's a very good striker, very explosive. He's got a lot of stuff that he mixes into it. He goes to the body very well. His output is solid, and you know, he's probably the cleaner. He is the cleaner striker here. There's very little doubt in my mind about that. But what he does is he does a lot of these funky moves. He loves to jump. He loves to throw flying stuff. And that's, I'm going to talk about his mistakes and a lot of the errors he makes in his fights, and that's one of them, right? Because what does that do if you're doing it and you're missing? If you're throwing yourself off balance, not once, but constantly, you're throwing yourself on your back. And it takes some kind of awareness to be able to be like, hey, this isn't working. I should stop. Or, hey, in this matchup, I'm fighting a grappler, and I don't want to put myself on the ground, so I probably shouldn't keep doing this. But that, you don't see that in his mind. You don't see it because he keeps doing it anyway. And that's part of my issue with him, is he's stubborn in that he's not changing his ways throughout a fight, even though things are changing in that fight. So that's one of my big problems with him. My other big problem with him is he's 23 years old, and he's been knocked out one time. This is in 2019 against Alan Gabriel. But at this, he's showing this kind of wear and tear that you don't want to see at a 23-year-old. He's getting hurt, and he's very hittable in pretty much every single fight. In the Eduardo Castro fight, guy's 9-5-0 now. He got hurt very quickly. In the Ramos fight, he got dropped not once but 2 times. Alan Gabriel dropped him and finished him early in round number 1. That's his only knockout loss. It's hard to trust the chin here, right? And it's not like Bittencourt. I'll talk about him more in a second, but it's not like he's some kind of crazy striker, but he does have power, and he could touch that chin, and he could put you out. So that is something to be concerned about if you're on the Rocha side. Another issue I have with Rocha, the grappling, right? His wrestling is pretty good. He's got 4 submission wins. You can tell he's comfortable on the ground. He's slick. He's got good transitions. But here's the thing. His takedown defense isn't that great. He's more than willing to go to the ground. And I don't love the things I'm seeing in the Silva fight. Like, he gave up his back so easily. He did defend well. He didn't get submitted, but he gave up his back. And while he's scrambling well, even in the Ramos fight, right? He got his back taken easily. But he was hurt, to be fair. Like, he got rocked, then he got his back taken. All that said, my point is his grappling offensively is pretty solid, but defensively, it's not really there, and I think it's a liability. And I was talking about the mistakes. I want to talk about a few of them. I have a whole list that I've been going over, talking about with people this week. One moment, guys. I live in New York, and we have a lot of noise, a lot of sirens. I can't even tell if you guys can hear it or not, but I can certainly hear it. They're gone now. So, back to Rocha. Here's my problems. Aside from him not registering that he should stop throwing flying things, right? Dropping to a leg lock against De Silva, who is clearly out grappling you. I mean, what is the zero awareness to go into that fight, to be fighting this guy, and you can see, like, he's not stupid. He's in the fight. He understands what's happening. He's getting completely out grappled. Why would you drop for a leg lock and give the guy what he wants? Same fight, same round. He goes for a Darce, very tight. Then he turns the wrong way, and the guy ends up holding him in a tight guillotine choke, almost subbing him. Goes for the armbar at the end of the first round against Castro. What happens? Castro ends up on top, starts beating up on him, and takes his back. And again, like I mentioned, the throwing the kicks in the Ramos fight. Again, another example. It's just he makes so many mistakes. He's chinny, and his defensive grappling is not up to par. So while I think he's going to be a stud, I don't think he's quite there yet. I think the record doesn't reflect truly what's there. The skill is there, but you need to be mentally there as well. You need to make good decisions. And at 23 years old, he's not making good decisions just yet in the cage. And while he's experienced, I think he still has a lot to learn. Now, Bittencourt on the other side. Both guys are good teams. Renovaciao, I can't pronounce it well. I apologize. It's a very good Brazilian camp. They are striker heavy. There's a few ACA guys in there. It's a good place to be, but maybe he could find better places to work on the grappling. Now, Bittencourt, he's at PRVT, which is a great Brazilian camp. A lot of good fighters coming out of there as well. And I was talking about it a little earlier, his striking, right? So it's not the best. It's not the best at all. It's serviceable, and it's only meant to set up his wrestling. You don't see him striking much. And almost any opportunity where the action stops for a second, he's shooting, which makes him difficult to hit and is going to be very good in this fight because I think the advantage for Rocha is on the feet, and that's where he can beat Costa or Bittencourt. And if Bittencourt's constantly shooting, he's not going to have as many opportunities. And on the feet, well, like I said, Bittencourt's not the most technical. He does hit really hard. He is solid there, and he's knocking guys down. He's knocking guys out. He can swing a bit wild, and he can throw those spinning kicks that don't land, and I don't really like them very much. I would rather he doesn't do those. But overall, he's a serviceable striker that I do think could chin Lucas Rocha, just because Rocha's chin is not very good. It's not like he just got knocked out in 2019. I could throw that away and be like, that's a one-off. But it's not a one-off when he's still getting hurt against guys who are 9-5-0. That is not a one-off, and there's no reason that Costa can't knock him out. Now, Costa can also be hurt. He got rocked 2 times in the Henrique fight, but like I said, with the amount that he's shooting, the amount that he's attempting to grapple, the amount of grappling exchanges that he's initiating, it's going to be hard to hit him much. Now, his thing is the wrestling. He's a phenomenal wrestler. I love his wrestling. I love the timing. I think he's extremely fast. He's relentless with those takedowns, a little Marab-esque in terms of how he's constantly shooting and not relenting on the pace. He does have good ground and pound, really good hips on the takedown defense, scrambles extremely well. I've seen him taken down by bigger guys in 2021 and 2019, but Rocha is a smaller dude. He's at 5'2". Those guys muscled him, and I don't think Rocha can do that. Now, Costa's also got a really good submission game. He's got 6 submission wins. He's got a slick back take. He's got good passes. And like I mentioned before, we've seen guys take advantage of him on the ground despite him having a decent ground game. So I do think that Davi, Bittencourt, Costa he can have a lot of success on the ground, and I think he's going to do just that. My one concern with him, and I think Rocha is going to be very live here. If you can get a good number on this, it might be worth taking a shot, is that Costa's been submitted twice, right? One of them was in 2021. The guy was 0-1-0. He's now 6-3-0. So he's not a bum, but he's not a good fighter anyways. He got reversed by Henrique, and he got thrown in a guillotine, which could be really good for Rocha and concerning as a Costa better, because Costa's going to be shooting a lot, and the head is going to be there, and the guillotine will be live. So I do think Rocha is going to go for it. He could get it, but at the same time, it could lend itself into what I was saying before, Rocha's bad decision-making, and if he's going for sloppy guillotines, he's going to give Costa Bittencourt whatever he wants. He's going to give him exactly what he wants. So I'm going to pick Costa. I think he's the more polished, well-rounded fighter. He could get submitted here, but I think more often than not, he wins this fight, whether it's by decision, by knockout, maybe even submission. I like Davi here, and we're going to move on to our next fight because I just spent quite a bit of time on that one. There's a lot to say, right? There's a lot to say. Had to turn off the AC. It's getting too cold in here, but let's move on to our next fight. Here we got Mauricio Ruffy versus Raimond Magomedaliev. Ruffy, he's 8-1-0, 30 years old. He's 5'11", and he is training out of Fighting Nerds. That's the camp where we got Kyle Barallo from. It's a very hot camp now, and it's a good place to be if you're going to be fighting grapplers, I would say. And then on the other side, we've got Raimond Magomedaliev. He's 10-1-0, 33 years old. He's going to be 6'1", so he's going to have a 2-inch reach advantage. And this is a great fight. My one thing is, I'll talk about in a second, is that everyone I've spoken to, we're all aligned, which almost never happens. We're all aligned on what we're looking for. And I'm concerned that A, we're all missing something, and B, that the odds makers are going to be on top of it and not give us what we're expecting. So starting this off, let's start off with the more known guy, Raimond Magomedaliev, right? This guy, he's fought in Eagle FC for his last 2 fights. He defeated Impa Kansaganai in a very, very close fight. Impa, he is a light heavyweight now. He is in PFL. He is in the finals. So it's not a terrible fight to go close. And I think having a win over Impa is a good look, but we did see some issues there. We saw the cardio problems, and we saw that when he can't get his takedowns, when the other fighter is showing some ability to also grapple with him, he can get very uncomfortable. Now, before that, he's had some good performances. Tyler McGuire in one, Edson Marquez in one, Joey Peretti. He's a good fighter. He's a very solid striker, mostly with the kicks, though. He's doing a lot of kicks, and my biggest problem with him, and why I think the other fella is very live, is that he doesn't throw enough with his hands. He'll throw a ton with his legs, really good leg kicks, nice front kicks. He's very good in the clinch, really nice clinch knees. But the problem is he's not throwing enough with his hands, and that's going to be an issue because if you're not getting your wrestling going and you're fighting someone with good hands, they're just going to counter those kicks because you're not setting them up. If you have that wrestling threat, it doesn't matter as much because they're so concerned about that wrestling. They're so concerned about you shooting. And that can happen. We've seen that with Ruffy, actually, is where he can get a little overly concerned with the takedown defense, and it leaves him open for counters. And that's something that Magomedaliev could take advantage of. But the issue is he's not throwing hands. So what's he going to do to take advantage? Throw kicks? It's not going to work the same. Now, that said, he is explosive. He is technical. He's dynamic. He's got 5 knockout wins. He's got some clean knockouts. But his biggest thing is his wrestling is phenomenal. His wrestling is really, really good. He's very strong. And the hips, like something I talk about a lot because I was a wrestler, and that's one of the only thing I can really provide background on and technical analysis of, because it's something that I understand, is I talk about hips a lot because people don't really understand that in wrestling, the things that are important are seemingly very random, right? Your hips, extremely important because they can make and break almost any position, especially in scrambles, because who wins scrambles 9 out of 10 times? It's the person who's able to elevate their hips and be higher up. It's a person who can use those hips. Who's defending takedowns the best? It's the guys who have really good hips. It's all about the hips. It's about being able to move away or just move and reverse positions in wrestling exchanges. The other important things that are random in wrestling, right? Your neck strength. Not as important in MMA. I've heard some things about neck strength, maybe strength, making your chin better. I don't know about all that, but I do know in wrestling it's important. My point is there's very random things, but hips, I think are key, especially if you're going to wrestle in MMA. And he does it very much so. His submission game isn't quite all that. He's only got 2 submission wins, but he is a really good guy on the ground. And I think that's going to have to be his path here. I think it's going to be his best opportunity to win this fight. Now, talking about Ruffy a little bit, I like a lot about this guy. Honestly, I like a lot. I think there's a lot to like, and I think he's very live in this fight. And I'm going to talk about it, about why like a lot of us are seeing what we're seeing. So in terms of striking, I think he's the better striker here. I don't have much doubt about it. I think he's much more dynamic. He's also got really good kicks, nice front kicks, uses them well, but he's also got hands, and his hands are great. Striking is clean, really, really good jab. He uses the jab so well, clean 1-2s, loves his spinning stuff, which I don't like very much, and it will make it easy to catch him off balance and take him down for a guy like Magomedaliev. But the overall thing to take from it is that he's very, very dynamic. He's a very solid striker, and all 8 wins of his come by knockout. He has not won any decisions. He's been knocked out 1 time. He's never been to a decision, and he's never been out of round 2. So the guy is a finisher by nature, and his fights just tend to be very violent. I low-key think that we're actually going to go to a decision here. I do think Ruffy could knock out Magomedaliev, but I have a hard time gaming that out in my head. What I'm seeing is Ruffy has very good takedown defense. Now, he hasn't been tested against a guy like Magomedaliev, but if you watch his tape, you watch almost everything, right? He gets taken down in 1 fight. Everyone tries it. No one has success except Sosa. Now, Sosa's 10-0 right now. Sosa's currently in the PFL, making a run. He's doing really well. So it's not a bad loss to have. And the best part about it is, A, he was defending all the takedowns, and B, most of them, and B, he was the one winning the striking exchanges against Sosa, who's a very solid fighter in his own right. Now, I do have issues with him. Like I mentioned, he can be a little hesitant, and he can be so concerned about the wrestling that he'll leave himself open in the striking. And he also lets himself get backed up a lot, which will lend itself to Magomedaliev being able to find success against the cage. But I do like that Ruffy's fought some decent guys. He's fought experienced guys. You got Raimond Torres, who was a UFC guy back in the day. We're talking like, I think, 2010, and he went 0-2. So not really a significant UFC vet, but the point is the guy was so experienced, 41, 8-0, almost 50 fights. And Ruffy was able to stuff the takedowns. He did take some damage, which I didn't love, and it's exactly because of what I was saying, that hesitancy because of the wrestling threat. But ultimately, he was able to stuff the takedowns, and he was able to finish Torres and win that fight. So I think that he is a very live underdog here. And I think in terms of who you're going to play, it mattered. The line couldn't matter more. And that's what I was talking about earlier a little bit when I was saying we're all seeing the same thing. Every single person I've spoken to, we've said the same thing, same conclusion, that Ruffy, if he is plus 250 or better, he's an automatic play. And I couldn't agree more. I think that's 100% true. The way I see it playing out is I would like plus 300 or better, because that gives us about a 25% chance, right? If you say Ruffy should be plus 300, you are saying that he's not winning this fight more than 2.5 out of 10 times, 25%. And I think that's incorrect. I think he can win this fight at least 3 out of 10 times, if not more. So that's why I want something around that plus 300 range. Maybe I would settle for plus 275, maybe plus 250. But I would really like something better here, because I do think Magomedaliev is very good. And now on the other hand, if the bookies do get onto it, if they are onto us, if they give me something tight, if they give me minus 150 Mago, if they give me pick 'em on Mago, I'm going to have to play Magomedaliev, because I do still think he's the more well-rounded fighter. I think he's got more to offer, and I think his wrestling is going to be what gets the job done here. So I think he wins this fight more often than not. And if you give me something that doesn't reflect that, I am going to play him. So my play is going to come down completely to the line, but I'm going to pick Magomedaliev. At the same time, I think Ruffy's a very live dog, and I'm really excited for this fight. There was a lot to talk about there, a lot to break down. Now, unfortunately, in this next fight, not as much, but we're still going to talk about it. We've got Magomed Gadzhiyasulov versus Jose Daniel Medina. I'm going to call him Gadzi for just ease of pronunciation. Gadzi, he's 7-0. He's undefeated. He's 29 years old, 6'3", and he's the first out of two fighters on this card fighting at a KHK MMA team. If that sounds familiar, it's because two reasons. We just saw a guy win in heavyweight, Gadziev, I think. I don't remember exactly his name. It was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago on the Contender series. Another KHK guy with really good wrestling, and we saw that. And who else do we know from KHK? Muhammad Makayev, absolute stud. And it's funny because all these guys, they are on a run, man. They're all on really long undefeated streaks. Gadzi, he's on a 15-fight winning streak. He hasn't lost in 15 fights. And on the Makayev side, do you know what Makayev's run is? Makayev's on a 33-fight win streak. Can you believe that? Who else? That is insanity. 33-fight win streak. And the guy in the main event that we're going to talk about, 18-fight win streak out of KHK. So these guys are really good, but their main thing is grappling. And you can see that because they all strike kind of the same. They all strike kind of like Mokayev does, where maybe other than the main event, we'll talk about him, but where their hands aren't so good. You can tell that their hands are they're a little uncomfortable in throwing their hands. They're more comfortable in using kicks. It's something you see a lot from these guys. And part of it, I think, is that they're not comfortable in using their hands yet, but they're comfortable with the kicks, similar to why Oliveira doesn't care to get knocked down, is that they don't care to be on the ground. They're willing to go to the ground. And in fact, a lot of the time, they're happy to go there. They're saying, bring me there. Let's go. I don't see Gadzi being on bottom here, though. I think he's going to be the one on top. I think that while his striking isn't very developed, and I don't love the striking, and he's a bit hittable, and he did get hurt in his last Muhammad Malim fight, which is not a great look. The guy's no stud. I think that the wrestling here is going to be enough. His wrestling is really, really good. And we're going to talk about his opponent right now, but his opponent just isn't that great. I have some concerns. He's been out for over a year. He had one fight in 2017, came back in 2021. He's just not very active, and I'm not super impressed by him. I don't think he's some kind of future extreme prospect. I really don't. But I do think that he should win this fight fairly easy because let's talk about Medina now. He's got the shiny record, 11-2-0. He's fighting out of Bolivia, which we're learning to really love South American fighters, especially on the Contender series. We've been meeting more and more of them, and we've been loving them, and they've been very good. We've seen some good Peruvian fighters, some good fighters from Argentina, and some other countries that I'm not remembering off of the top of my head. Obviously Brazil, but that's nothing new. And I don't think we have many Bolivian guys. I don't think we have anyone from Bolivia representing the country in the UFC. But Medina is not the best choice, man. First of all, he's going to be much smaller here. He's around 6 feet tall. We don't have the numbers, but just measuring him against his opponents, which is something I like to do when I don't have heights, he doesn't seem very tall. He's certainly not very athletic. He's one of these chubbier dudes, looks a little bit like me. In fact, a little chubbier than I am. I would say significantly chubbier than I am. And I think I still got some good form, but just not very athletic, right? And there's a few big issues with him. His striking, it's okay. And like Wiz was laughing yesterday because the only really nice things I had to say about his striking is he's got nice body shots and he's kind of thick. So it looks like he's got some power, but that's really it. His output's really low. His striking is just meh. The jab is decent, but he's fighting terrible competition. He is knocking him out, 8 knockout wins, 2 submission wins. So only one fight coming by decision. Only one win coming by decision. All his other wins coming inside the distance. The competition is just horrible. I mean, it's bad for Gadzi too, but Gadzi's at least destroying these guys. Whereas Medina, he's having not the best fights. He's very, very hittable. He got hurt in his last fight against Filio in the first round, not once, but 2 times. Filio is 4-2-0. He's no prospect. I can promise you that. And it's just not a great look for that to happen. And his takedown defense is also not very good. He does kind of do the right things, but again, he got taken down by 4-2-0. Filio, just not a good look. A guy like Gadzi is going to be able to do whatever he wants with him, whenever he wants it. And I don't think his money line is going to be playable. He's Certainly going to be a viable parlay piece if he's around minus 300. If he's minus 200, minus 250 at opener, that's a price where I'm just going to play him straight because I think that's easy. Like, I don't like to say easy money, but I think that's easy money. And I think that Godzi's gonna finish this dude. So I'll be looking at ITD as well. Moving on, we've got a fight that I've heard a lot of people saying nice things about, and I would borrow a word from a phrase from Dana White, what he said last week about the heavyweights. If you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Unfortunately, I have to say stuff because this is a breakdown show and this is a fight that we have to break down. I just don't like it very much. I don't think either guy's UFC caliber. But here we've got Eduardo Matias Torres versus Victor Hugo Silva. Torres, he is 16-1-0. He's 28 years old and he's 5'8". On the other side, Silva, he's 23-4-0. He's 30 years old, so he's 2 years older. Also 5'8". Now, there's so many red flags on this fight, and honestly, I'm probably not going to bet it unless I get like a surprising line. But I've got a bunch to say. So first off, let's start with Silva, right? The dude is an enigma. He's a very, very strange story. He's currently on a 12-fight win streak, 7-1 in decisions. He's a very good minute winner. He's only 30 years old, despite fighting since 2011. But he's not very active, right? He had one fight in 2023 about 4 months ago. It went exactly 23 seconds. Before that, he had 2 fights in 2022 for a total of 10 minutes of cage time. One of those fights being 42 seconds long. Before that, 2 fights in 2019. And before that, 2017 and earlier were all of his fights. So inactivity, big red flag. Another big red flag. This fight is at bantamweight. When was the last time that Silva fought at bantamweight? It was in 2017. Since then, he's fought in 2 weight classes, and it's really weird because he skipped one. He's fighting at featherweight, and he's fighting at welterweight. That's a really weird jump. Why it's not featherweight, lightweight, or lightweight, welterweight, I don't know. But he's fighting at featherweight and welterweight since 2017, and he has not been down to 135 since 2017. I've seen some people say he looks big and thick, but that's why. And I feel that looking at him in the fights where he's fighting at welterweight and featherweight and thinking, hey, this guy's big and strong and he's going to be more physical, you have to remind yourself that in those fights, he had an additional, if it's at welterweight, he had an additional 35 pounds. If it's at featherweight, he had an additional 10 pounds. Going down to bantamweight, I'm not sure that he's going to look as big and as physical. And in fact, I think it might zap that cardio and it might zap that chin and add on to that the inactivity. And now we're having some major concerns. Now we have a guy who, while he's talented and only 30 years old, we don't know whether he can go a long period of time in a fight. He's only gone 46 seconds since 2022. We don't know whether the guy is going to be able to make weight. We don't know if the chin is going to hold up. He's not really getting knocked out often. 2 knockout losses. The last one was in 2015. It was a rib injury. The guy is currently 18-3-0 and who just beat Marcelo Rojo in the regionals. So it's not a horrible loss, and it was a long time ago, and it wasn't a clean knockout. It was a rib injury. Other one was Felipe Froas in 2017. So neither of his knockout losses are bad, and they're all relatively old, but I just feel like he's going to be more liable for a knockout here because of everything I've been talking about. He also doesn't move his head. He seems very uncomfortable on the feet, and his striking seems pretty wild to me. I don't love his striking game at all, and I think that it's going to be a liability for sure. Now, his ground game, very, very good, and he's going to have a significant edge on the ground. His wrestling is really good. Doesn't set it up well because he doesn't really have the striking for it. If you watch my stuff, you know I talk about this a lot. I think that wrestlers, while they can be fantastic wrestlers in MMA, they need to have hands. They need to be able to set up those takedowns, because if you're only worrying about one thing, if you're only worrying that your opponent's going to shoot on you, you know what you have to do. You just have to sprawl. But if you're worried about your opponent shooting at you, but at the same time your opponent has hands and you have to worry about your face or your body, then it's much harder to defend those takedowns because you're defending 2 things and not one thing at a time. So that's one thing, but I do think he's going to be able to take down Torres. I really do. He's got 8 submission wins. He's got a really slick back take. He's very good on the ground, but I don't love some of the things he does, like rolling for heel hooks. I know he got it in his last one, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea. On the Torres side, I was so disappointed, man. 16-1-0 coming out of Chile. 28 years old. I thought I was about to see some stud. And honestly, I saw a guy who has no place in being here. Neither guy does, in my opinion. Maybe they'll prove me wrong and I'll be happy that that happened. But right now, I don't think he's UFC caliber at all. His striking is solid, and he's certainly going to be the better striker here. He's got a good 1-2. He's really fast. He's got slick counters, nasty body shots, and he has solid power, but nothing too crazy. A little bit pillow fisted. 5 knockout wins in 17 fights. It could be better, but it's not bad either at bantamweight. Now, his defensive grappling, that's my issue here. He was able to get dragged down by Miranda, but he did eventually get away. He is very good at getting back up from grappling positions. Now, he hasn't fought anyone with the grappling caliber of Silva at all. So while I do think he's got good get-ups, I think it's going to be a lot harder here. And while he's shown solid takedown defense against bad competition, I think it's going to be harder here. And he did get taken down by 5'4" and Kunahai. So I think the grappling is a significant liability here. He's got some decent wins. He's got a win over Rodrigo Vera, who's 14-1-0 now, his only loss coming to Torres. But he's also gone to decisions with guys who are 5-4-0, with guys who are 1-2-0. So I hate this fight. I don't think really either guy is worth a bet. There's no way in hell I'm putting my money on Silva unless he's a tremendous underdog because of all of the red flags that I listed. But I'm not going to have any interest in Torres unless the line is very tight because I don't think Torres is very good, and he's got a tremendous grappling liability. So I'm going to pick Torres, but I don't think this is really a great fight to bet on. And it might be fun, but I don't really think it's a fight that should be happening. I just don't think it's a good Contender Series bout. But our main event is, and I'm hyped to talk about it. Here we've got Rodolfo Bellato versus Murtaza Talha. Bellato, he's 10-2-0. He's 27 years old. 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. I've got him out of Team Nogueira. On the other side, though, we've got Talha. Talha is 6-0. He's undefeated. And as I mentioned earlier on the show, he is on a 18-fight winning streak. Dude is an absolute monster. Sorry, I keep playing with my microphone. Try to keep at the best angles, but it's hard to tell sometimes. But let's get into these guys. So Talha, he is training at a KHK. I was talking about it earlier because of Gadzi. Gadzi's also at a KHK. Like I mentioned, Magomed Gadzhiyasulov camp. And similar to all those guys, his wrestling, in my opinion, is better than his striking. But unlike those guys, he at least has some hands. He's got a great jab. He's got really solid striking, nasty clinch knees, really clean counters. Also, I didn't want to mention, it seems like he spent some time at Extreme Couture for this camp. And that's always a great look, training with the champion, Sean Strickland. That's so crazy to say. But he's a better striker than most guys coming out of KHK. And he does have significant power. If you listen to his tape with the volume on, literally all you hear the commentator saying is his power, 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 his power. But I don't think it's that insane, honestly. Like, he's only got 3 knockout wins in 6 pro fights. I mean, that's half of them, right? And then the other half are submission wins, 3 sub wins. Never been to a decision. Only been out of round 1 time. Never been out of round 2. So the guy is a finisher. He's got okay wins. I mean, Saziani's okay. Guy was 7-1-0 at the time. He's currently 11-2-0. So he's got decent competition, but no one too good. And I do think that out of everyone he's fought, Bellato is his best competition to date and easily his hardest test to date. But like I mentioned, he's got very decent striking, very decent power. He can overswing sometimes and leave himself open for counters. But the wrestling, if he's ever uncomfortable on the feet, it's very, very solid. He's got great takedowns. He's very strong on top. I don't think that Bellato will be easy to take down. I know we saw Petrino take him down, but Petrino is a physical specimen. Absolutely just a specimen. If you don't know who he is, look him up. Bellato has only lost 2 times in his pro career, and both of those losses have come to Petrino by knockout. But his second time around, he did decent against Petrino. He knocked down Petrino himself. He showed good takedown defense. Like I mentioned, I know Petrino got him down, but Petrino, he's bigger and more physical than Talha. Who's stronger, Talha or Petrino? I can't really tell you, but my eye test tells me Petrino. Now, talking about Bellato, like I mentioned, he fought Petrino on his first Contender Series bout. It was a rematch. He did get knocked out there, but he's a pretty good fighter. You know, his wrestling is very solid. His takedown defense, like I've been saying just now, is pretty decent. He's got 4 submission wins. And he did take down Dos Santos in his LFA fight really easily. But the thing is, Dos Santos, his striking's decent, but he did fight on the Contender Series against Anton Turkali, the Pleasure Man. And what happened there? He got taken down 11 times by the Pleasure Man. And I can promise you this, that Talha was a much, much better wrestler than the Pleasure Man. And I think better than Bellato as well. So I don't think that Bellato is going to be able to take down Talha, at least not at a high clip. We have seen Talha's takedown defense tested a lot. It's really interesting, honestly, that people are coming into into the fights with him, knowing he's a good wrestler, but they don't want to strike with him, which tells you something, right? It tells you the power is real because they don't want to strike with him. They're trying to take him down. And I think Bellato's going to do the same thing because I don't like Bellato striking. He doesn't seem confident on the feet. I do like the body shots. The jab is pretty good, but he wings wild really often. And I think that Talha will be able to take advantage of that and find the chin. Overall, I do think Talha kind of rules here. I do think he gets the takedowns. I do think he defends any takedowns from Bellato. I do think he outstrikes Bellato. But at 6'3", Bellato, he is going to be much bigger, and I'm not completely sold on Talha just yet. So if he's some kind of insane number, I'm not going to be able to get behind that. If it's a close line, hell yeah, I'm on Talha. And if it's a decent parlay piece price, maybe I'll do him and Gadzi, which I think everybody is going to do. So that's a little worrying, but I do think Talha wins this at a very high clip. So give me Talha for this fight. And that's it, guys. That's 5 fights. That's Dana White's Contender Series Week 9. I can't give you bets yet because there are no odds, but I can repeat my picks, and then we're going to wrap up the show and head out of here. So first pick of the card is Davi Bittencourt. Then I'm going to go with Raimond Magomedaliev, but the play we're looking for is Mauricio Ruffy plus 250 or better. Then I'm going to pick Gadzi over here. Then I'm going to pick Eduardo Torres, even though very little confidence. And then we're going to pick Murtaza Talha as the final one for the card. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Appreciate every single one of you. If you missed this earlier on in the show, I did go live yesterday two times. Well, I didn't go live one of them. I put up 2 videos, but the first one I went live for was I went live with Wiz. Wiz does, my guy. We do a weekly Dana White's Contender Series show. So we went over this card together. If you want to see me and him talk about it, if you want to hear what he had to say, if you want to hear some of our back and forth, make sure to run that back. And then I also put out a PFL video yesterday, PFL Europe 3. If you're interested in that, if you like PFL, if you like to bet on it, make sure to run that back. I went over the whole card and gave you guys my best bets and predictions. We already beat a ton of line movement with that video. Since then, a lot of the lines have come crashing down. I even lost out on some spots I wanted, but means we're doing something right. So make sure to run that back. No UFC this week, but next week we'll be back to usual schedule. Thank you guys all once again, and peace out.